monitor activities in plants, to look at activities around train loadings and unloadings, to be looking at storage capabilities. We also used aerial and fixed photography to measure things such as storage levels, rail car tracking, stockpile volumes, and a lot of infrastructure intelligent gathering and tracking is done. The fifth technology is vibroacoustics. We actually bury these in the grounds and we listen to how the natural gas is flowing through pipelines. So in 2009, Genscape started monitoring oil storage volumes at Cushing, Oklahoma. We were very quickly asked by several customers if we couldn't also look at some of the pipelines coming into and out of Cushing. So we started doing that. Now we can provide reliable data 48 hours before the EIA releases their data. We have continued to expand our operations both in North America and globally, and we intend to continue doing so. So that's what we do. We gather market information, we gather data, we let you know what's happening as close to real time as it can possibly be done in the oil and energy activities for logistics, storage, and even plant operations. So enough of that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Adam and let him get started on the reason you actually joined us here today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brian. This is just a quick overview of what we've been seeing on Seaway over the last couple months. Some of you may have gotten this as existing customers. The Pipeline Intelligence Report, where we're talking about how Seaway expanded to 400,000 barrels per day, and you know, the power consumption we were monitoring at various stations, and as the infrastructure progressed and the timeline, was it on time, was it behind schedule, what we were seeing was very meaningful and impactful. So in the next slide is an image of what you see on our dashboard as a client. You not only see what the flow currently is relatively or as close to real time as possible, as you see here with Seaway, but you also get to see things such as power consumption, and you see what stations were actually monitored. So below is a schematic of the existing pump stations for Seaway, and the ones that we do have monitoring on are highlighted in red with the red bullets. Okay, so what happened over a couple of weeks ago? And you know, obviously there were a wide range of theories of what forced Jones Creek to issue the notice to shippers, Enterprise issue the notice to shippers at Jones Creek to divert to Katy if possible, and then allocate space down to 175 barrels per day of flow. Storage at Jones Creek had filled up, which is roughly 3.2 million barrels combined. The Department of Energy, this is what we know. The Department of Energy sent a notice to a financial news agency that the DOE ExxonMobil line was not, in fact, having issues, but there was an actual power outage at Jones Creek. And to that degree, you can't pinpoint it on one event alone. It seems like everything cascaded together and created this backup of flow, as you'll see in the coming slides and imagery. There was more than one culprit. It just happened that it was a perfect storm of issues. And there are some obvious constraints around this. Phillips 66 was pointed out as a possible culprit at their Sweeney refinery was down for maintenance on the CDU and coker, which is due to return mid-February. But this would have shown up in nominations that they probably would have known about this ahead of time and stress tested for it. But the fact is they were undergoing maintenance, and in conjunction with the power outage, this facilitated the backup. And then, of course, there's Rancho, which is only 350,000 barrels per day of capacity, and that moves from West Texas to east. It carries a lot of Eagle Ford crude oil condensate to the Houston area. So we will show you images of Katy storage and comment on that as well. But from our understanding, there was limited space available on this pipeline, roughly 50,000 to 100,000 barrels per day, which effectively limits how much can go onward or east to Houston and the refineries. So what were the results of this? Obviously, this was a huge market impacting event, not just the expansion up to 400,000 barrels per day, but the sudden reduction in volume or the limitation in volume to one of the two delivery points at Jones Creek. So it implied slower Cushing drawdowns. I think the market had been expecting things to drop a little more dramatically once pipeline capacity expanded to 400,000 barrels per day. The Brent WTI spread has reversed tremendously, as all of you are well aware by now. It went, I think, as low as $16 or possibly even $15, and is back over 22 presently. Forward curve structure shifted tremendously. Everything went into a steeper carry. You saw the back end rally. And finally, inland crude differentials and offshore waterborne differentials also showed some exceptional volatility when the announcement came. And a great example of this that we saw was Midland differentials, which dove in conjunction with the BP crude unit outage, while grades such as LS and others started to rally. In the next slide, so again, this just emphasizes what we saw in the marketplace when the Jones Creek announcement happened. How did it reflect in our own monitoring, and what happened to Brent TI, obviously. So the purple line being our megawatt consumption averaged across all pumping stations, and you can see it drops pretty much in line with the way the Brent TI spread moved, and how you can also see how volume picked up as well. So, and the next slide is actually, we understand this is a pretty busy slide. However, in essence, we sought to show you just how much Seaway's activity was strongly correlated with market activity. Slide that shows essentially historical volatility in the WTI Brent spread in comparison to Seaway pipeline flows on a trailing 7-period basis. There's clearly a strong relationship here between large moves in pipeline flows and the volatility of the spread. But this confirms what the CME and ICE have said about the amount of trading volume that Seaway has generated over the past few weeks. And on the next slide, so this is where we're going to dig into the images and go over the constraints in a little more detail and discuss them. So there's a lot of other constraints or potential constraints here. Clearly, connectivity is a huge issue. We're going to talk about that. Crude oil storage space, planned and unplanned turnaround and repairs for refineries, available dock space, Jones Act shifts, and obviously there's a conglomeration of unforeseen issues that can always happen and impact the flows. Additionally, we have provided a schematic of the system, not only the Seaway system itself, but the connectivity there and in Houston and what's going to be built out. I'd like to thank Hillary Stevenson, Ali Heiniger, Micah Nave, and Darren Jennings for their help in putting not only this slide together, but a lot of the other presentation as well, and in particular, Ali for devoting the time on the research end. It was very helpful. They were all great. But to dive into this, you can see here clearly, if you look at Houston, there's a tremendous amount of more connectivity, okay? Seaway has only 2 exit points right now, and that's through Rancho or beyond Jones Creek, Freeport on the DOE line, and that can create some issues or makes it more susceptible to issues. So obviously the other constraints here are the lack of logistical connectivity. Top image is Genoa Junction, and the bottom one is Webster Station. For us, Genoa Junction is a big deal because as oil flows on the Rancho and onto Houston, it has to go through Genoa Junction, and from Genoa Junction onward, it can connect to really any Houston refinery or connecting station. So if anything happens there, or if any setback occurs, then flows can really get backed up quickly. We did see some work being done on Genoa Junction, but we don't think it's material. It looks like new pipe work was being done. We did not see any work being done on the pumps. And below is the Webster Station, as I mentioned. There is work being done there on one of the pumps at Webster, but our impression is that this is new work. This is new work being done by Genesis Energy as they expand pipe capacity down there to Webster Station and beyond to Texas City and other spots. So we don't believe that was material to what happened on Seaway. And just to tell everyone, these are all images from yesterday. The weather down in the Houston area has been pretty rough, but we managed to get a flight crew who did take a lot of imagery and infrared video over the last 24 hours. Okay. So, in regards to storage space for crude oil, there are some pretty decent sized constraints there as well. Because of the lack of connectivity, these constraints or risks often are going to become amplified. So if there's limited storage to dump into, it's only going to be a matter of days when things back up. So you had the power outage and you had maintenance going on at Phillips, and as we'll show, we don't actually have the images up right now, but we took images of KD storage as well, and we have never seen the storage space at the KD station as full as it is. In fact, we believe it to be upwards of 97% or higher in terms of utilization at this point, and we have images for about a year now, month on month on month. The top image is Echo. Obviously, the three 250,000 barrel tanks have been built out, but right now, according to Enterprise, only 2 of them are operational. The third one is due in February. Additionally, there are 3 other tanks being built out that are due to be completed by Q1 2014 in construction. Those are 2 250,000 barrel tanks and a 400,000 barrel tank. And as you can see, if you look closely, there are 2 areas where they are clearing space for the foundations on 2 of the tanks. So again, while Seaway can flow 400,000 barrels per day, we don't think there are any immediate constraints, but it, because of its vulnerability to its current design, was the lateral from Jones Creek to Echo necessary? No, but would it help? Yes, and definitely with the extra storage space, it would provide an outlet should something material occur further down the line. So to that effect, the completion date for the Jones Creek lateral is approximately going to be Q3 2013 to our knowledge. And just to that point on the storage slide, I did want to mention that there is limited amount of storage space in Houston right now. To my knowledge, there are a lot of projects being built out, whether it's at Oil Tanking Houston, Galena Park for Kinder Morgan, but utilization is fairly high from what I know. Other constraints moving on to refineries, obviously there's a significant amount of refineries in the Mid-Con and Gulf Coast going down for planned and unplanned turnaround and repairs right now. Roughly 1.6, 1.7 million barrels in CDU capacity. So right now, these images, we took infrared of Texas City to see if anything was going on there. The FCCU is confirmed to be down at Valero, Texas City, and while the coker unit on the top is still on and active. But to that extent, this has implications of its own. If one of these refiners go down, things can get backed up pretty quickly. And right now, the 3 refiners that we know that have CDU and coker capacity offline for maintenance in the region that could affect these flows are Phillips 66 Sweeney, Houston Refining, and Shell Deer Park, which I think are due to return consecutively mid-February, mid-March, and beginning of April. Slide number 10, or I'm sorry, slide number 18. Dock space is also a constraint because we're talking about immediate outlets here for all these flows should they have nowhere to go, or if refiners have filled out their storage space for crude oil, given the limited outlets, given the limited capacities, such as on Rancho, where it's only 350,000 barrels per day on that line. Freeport, and this is an image of Freeport right here. You can't move out barrels or load barrels yet. I believe Enterprise officials said not until the second half of 2013. Texas City, you're capable of loading and unloading, but too much congestion with product barges and tankers given the export market, so there are no loadings known right now. Enterprise is Morgan City, or Enterprise is Morgan Point. The Q4 call, officials stated that crude was being moved out of there. There's a 24-inch line from Echo to Genoa Junction and then onto a 18-inch line to Morgan's Point. However, Morgan's Point docks can only handle up to 2 30,000-barrel barges at any one time. We do know that Genesis Energy is also increasing Texas City dock space, so we'll be, as we progress in our monitoring of the Gulf Coast, we're bringing a new product to market, it's the Eagle Ford product. We're going to be expanding into the Permian and into the Houston area as well, especially with the major pipeline projects being brought online. We will bring better visibility on that as well as images and monitoring. But in the meantime, we will watch for new emissions permits that are looking to install vapor recovery systems, because they need to re-permit emissions when the flow on the docks are reversed or become bidirectional. So this in turn turns to another constraint that obviously is well known, and that's the ability to move barrels along the coast with Jones Act ships. Right now, according to a conference call, there was roughly 36 Jones Act vessels in service. However, most of them are in service on the West Coast and are likely to be until we believe the Panama Canal finishes its project, or widening project. These ships are not cheap either. That's well publicized. Currently, I'm told that you need to offer a 3-year charter around $50,000 a day or higher, and there's nothing available for spot charters. Canadians will probably clear some of the excess light sweet, or will need to once the pipelines from the Permian come up, because the barrels that are going to be coming out of the Permian are predominantly light sweet, 97%, I believe. But there are barrels moving up to Canada. So all in all, costs for a trip to Canada are roughly estimated around $300,000 of freight costs, and approximately top maybe 800,000 to 1 million barrels can move up there, but we don't think it will be that much. So on the following slide, obviously unforeseen circumstances such as this power outage that we witnessed on Jones Creek are going to impact Seaway flows moving forward until that lateral gets built out, until there's better connectivity and more storage available to dump into. These are images of pump stations that we took, again, yesterday over the past few days at Cushing, Terrell, Cedar, and Waller. At Cushing, you can see pumps are on according to our IR imagery. The black areas that are showing are oil that is flowing through these pipes. Terrell, there's really nothing of significance happening there. It's just mopping up and filling in, finishing up the work. Cedar, no significant observations. The work is complete. Waller, however, there is some work being done there, and it's interesting work. Bottom right slide, there's a pig launcher and or trap being reinforced and tested, and that is something new and something we haven't seen previously in flights that we've taken over the last couple of years or year or so. So what is the outlook for the Seaway Pipeline and what does this all translate into, and where does Genscape fit into the picture? Okay. Again, Seaway has the ability to flow 400,000 barrels per day. We are confident about that. We're confident in our models and what they've reflected. We've gotten feedback from the trading community that our flows are accurate, and we are on top of what's going on there. It can flow 400,000 barrels a day with or without the Jones Creek lateral that is being built to ECHO. Constraints right now, again, are connectivity and capacity. Rancho can only hold 350,000 barrels per day and has 2 direct exit points, Katy and Jones Creek. And this makes them very vulnerable to nearby unplanned outages or ones further down the line, whether at key junctions such as Genoa or Webster, or in addition to unplanned refinery outages. The ability to move barrels directly to ECHO from Jones Creek will reduce some of this risk. The bigger issue in my mind and test will be when Seaway completes its twinning and expands to 850,000 barrels per day. At that point, you've only added the Jones Creek lateral. Can it handle all those additional barrels should something happen at Jones Creek or further down the line? Certainly, Rancho cannot if something cuts it off before Jones Creek. But even that leaves other questions. Okay, so how does Cushing get resupplied, especially with heavy sour Canadian material that this region is predominantly known for using, given its complexity? There is some flexibility on the refining end to use lighter sweet blends such as Eagle Ford, Bakken, but that is limited as well. And even now, the northern leg of Keystone XL decision is probably going to come earliest at June from what I've read most recently and been told. So, and any further refills are going to come in 390,000 barrels per day of new capacity that comes online in Q3 2013 from 3 pipelines, but most of this is shale plays. This in turn will produce persistent volatility imbalances on the Gulf Coast at Cushing, future spreads, whether in the ARB or forward curve, and some widespread mid-con and Gulf Coast crude basis volatility. This is only going to be solved as more valves are open east and additional pipeline capacity from the Permian into the region comes online. So things like the Ho-Ho reversal, the Enterprise Houston or Enterprise Echo to Beaumont line, which is scheduled to come online Q1 2014, will help relieve some of these constraints. But it's a very interesting picture because you have these existing constraints, and as you open them up or solve them, it unearths a bunch more. So the progression will be interesting to watch over the coming year or two as flows continue to progress or in a more eastward fashion. So as to the composition of the crude being shipped, we do not have the ability to see that, okay, with our monitoring service. However, we do, we have ways of essentially modeling this out. Right now, my estimate is somewhere around 71% light sweet, 29% heavy sours flowing down the line currently, but that balance should shift moving forward. Marathon, Valero, Phillips 66, all recently stated they've completely backed out light sweet imports at their Gulf Coast facilities. So any additional is just going to make Texas even more long light sweet crude oil. Okay, especially as we see the completed reversal of Longhorn, expansion of West Texas Gulf system, and Bridge Tex come online over the coming years. So, in regards to Brent WTI, and tying this all in with our monitoring and why it's important that we're monitoring what we are and how we're doing it and providing these real-time flows and this information and intelligence. Obviously, there's a strong rational belief that as the pipeline capacity opens up to the east with the Ho-Ho reversal and other lines, that the Brent-TI spread will tighten dramatically as more light sweet, or what is left along the coast is displaced, and the SARB will tighten dramatically. However, there are some risks to this scenario. Bigger risk is Houston and Texas City refiners start hoarding the light sweet. Even as Eastern Pass open up, we're seeing a lot of storage capacity being built, and we're going to be monitoring the building of that storage capacity. Again, I'm emphasizing that over the next 6 months, you'll see a strong push on Genscape's part to release new products that center around the Gulf Coast, Eagle Ford, and Permian in particular, and better enhanced monitoring of these systems and the pipeline projects. In regards to these refiners, I mean, they have every incentive to keep their competitors from having access to inland cheaper crudes and force them to continue to buy from the waterborne market and thus be priced off Brent. This will keep the spread wide, or could keep the spread wide, not only between WTI Brent, but also WTI LLS. Incrementally, this could tighten various light heavy spreads, but it will be made up in product margins on a competitive basis, especially with the export market. I think was at 2 million barrels per day end of Q4, and it's looking like it's going to go to 3.5 million barrels per day by the end of 2013. So to that extent, should this worst case scenario not happen, theoretically the spread could tighten more as light sweet is backed out into the global waterborne market, but even that side of the equation has risks related to structurally declining North Sea production, geopolitical tensions in the Saudis and OPEC, reducing production even further to keep a supportive floor under prices. Another risk is continued growing emerging market demand in Asia and South America, which has continued to offset maturing markets that are increasingly energy efficient, such as Europe and the US. Regardless, the situation that presents itself before us and you as the trading and analytical community and part of the supply chain is an important one. Okay? There's going to be continued volatility in spreads and basis. And here at Genscape, our goal is to provide better visibility on these infrastructure developments and the flows to better clarify the overall picture. So by doing this, we're creating better transparency with increased quality proprietary monitoring, and our services and additional viewership on further Seaway expansions, storage buildups, and new pipeline capacity coming online in the Gulf Coast is key to building this picture in a more fundamentally less logistically constrained. With that, I'm going to end my session and turn it back over to Brian.
Thank you, Adam. As most of you who are our supply chain bundle customers know, we've just recently released our U.S. crude oil production forecast report. If you look at this, it really emphasizes the importance of the information we've been looking at today, and how as additional intermediate and light, especially a lot of the light production is coming on, it's got to have some place to go, and Seaway is going to play an extremely important part of that. There's going to have to be some expansion. There's going to have to be some additional facilities, and we're going to know as those come on probably before you can find them out any other way in the market. To find out more about Genscape and the products we offer, I encourage you to go to our website and sign up for a free trial. The information is on the slide that should be in front of you. Additionally, I would certainly welcome a contact from any of you, as would Bob Lemp, our Vice President of Sales, or Chris Sternberg, our Managing Director. And you can find our information on the screen now. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Sternberg now, who's going to handle our question and answer session.
Thanks, Brian. Just one more acknowledgement as we move forward. We do have a partner that does provide us some satellite imagery as well with Digital Globe, and we want to acknowledge them for helping us out with this report, as well as other work that we do in the research that we do. So thanks to those guys as well. We have a number of questions that have come in already, so we'll try to get through them. We do have a good amount of time here, so we'll try and crank through them. The first one is Genscape able to monitor the flow of the barrels coming off the line at Seaway Katy and pumping into Rancho?
Again, we don't have direct visibility on Rancho right now. However, we are building out our Eagle Ford service, monitoring service, and Rancho, Echo, and moving towards Petula, Gardendale are our primary focus. So we should have an answer on that, whether or not it is feasible for us to monitor those stations. But we are seeking to do that right now.
Great, thanks, Adam. There have been a number of questions about the PowerPoint presentation, and we will be distributing the information. We'll be sending to our clients early on, and then we'll be sending out to everyone else relatively shortly at that, early next week. So the next question is has the power outage problem been corrected at Jones Creek, and when did the power outage happen? How long was the power out?
Based on flow activity, we believe the power outage has been solved, or fixed rather, and we don't know how long the power outage was, but based on feedback from enterprise officials and discussing it amongst ourselves, looking at the flows, we figure it could have been more than a week to 2 tops. A week to week and a half would probably be the best estimate.
Great. Next question. I think there were rumors that there is tank capacity issues at Jones Creek as there were tanks out of service for maintenance. Has Genscape been able to confirm if there are still tanks out of service?
Yes, there are 2 tanks that are out of service. The rest are operational, and we estimate right now that there are the 40 to 50% of Jones Creek storage capacity is being utilized as of yesterday. So given that circumstance, given the increased flows and the way Katy storage has topped out on the Rancho line, we strongly believe that the whole problem did start with the power outage at Jones Creek.
Great. Next question is, does it appear to you that every actual production volume published for Bakken and Eagle Ford exceeds the most recent forecast, i.e. there is more upside potential than anyone seems to imagine?
That's not a question I can speak to at this time. Actually, I would encourage that person to reach out to our Spring Rock production group. They would definitely have much better color than I would on that and give you some better thoughts. But yes, they have been exceeding forecasts across the board.
Genscape, next question is, Genscape has been showing the flow currently averaging below 300,000 barrels. What do you think is the anticipated ramp-up timetable for higher flows, given the constraints you've talked about today?
Again, I don't think there is a constraint to get to 400,000 barrels per day. I think the constraint is the lack in connectivity that they have right now, and any small issue or hiccup in the system, whether further down the line or close, can create some serious problems and back up things very quickly. There are not too many outlets for Seaway barrels right now, and there's limited tank space to dump into. So that said, my only, if I were to hazard a guess as to when we could see flows pick up even stronger, is when Phillips 66 returns from maintenance by mid-February, which should be really any week now.
Great. Next question is, Adam, do you think it's possible to predict the average Seaway flow to be for each quarter of 2013?
Do I think it's possible? Yeah, I'm sure you could forecast that out, but obviously there's a great amount of risk to that, and lots of variables. Again, I think in combination with our Spring Rock data, we could probably give you a pretty firm forecast on that.
Okay. Next question. Does Genscape plan to monitor, or can you monitor power at the Jones Creek terminal in the future?
We are looking into that. What we do here is we don't just pass over pumps once and then leave it as is if we found out that we could not monitor at the time. What we'll usually do is we'll go back every 6 months or a year, especially to the more important locations, and reassess the situation. And we are reassessing Jones Creek to get better visibility on that pump station.
Okay. Next question. How will incremental storage capacity at ECHO affect flows on Seaway? Is the Enterprise Jones Creek to ECHO line the only bottleneck, or do you think ECHO storage build-outs can alleviate the bottleneck?
I believe it can alleviate some of the bottleneck. Again, I'm not necessarily calling it a bottleneck. I don't want to call it a bottleneck because they do have the capability to flow at full rates right now according to all sources. The issue again is just the ability to put barrels somewhere should something happening, and I think that would relieve the stress on the system. And I think the incremental storage capacity and the line, or the lateral rather, would help.
Okay. Next question is more related to some storage, but what has accounted for the greater variability between Genscape and DOE Cushing storage stats in recent weeks?
I want to say, let me think about that for just a moment. I believe there was a holiday mid-January, okay, and anytime there's a delay or there's a shorter work week or there's a delay in the report, we do see increased variation in the way our storage tracks the DOE. But again, we do real imagery and real values of storage.
And we also see that they'll true up over the course of the month.
Right, exactly. So on a 4-week moving average basis, the changes do net out pretty well. And what we do plan on releasing at some point in the future is as DOE revises its figures on a historical basis, so they'll issue their monthly reports, we do see things net out on a change basis with them fairly well.
Great. Adam, the next question is around the light-heavy split. There's a couple of questions, so I'll just combine them for you. What would you say is your confidence range around the 70-30 light-heavy split estimate you provided? And also, can you provide some color on how you calculated that?
At this time, I don't want to disclose how I calculated that. However, what I will mention is confidence in the 70-30 split right now is very minimal given the fact that they just expanded. My analysis had been accurate the first, I want to say, 5-6 months based on shipper feedback that I pulled. So I would bring my calculations of how much light and how much heavy I believe to be flowing down Seaway in any given month, and I think it would fit within 5,000 to 10,000 barrels, which was fairly reasonable.
Next question is, what is the demand for light sweet crudes in the Houston area, i.e. access to Seaway, Houston area refineries?
I don't know the exact figure, but it's based on the configuration of Houston area refineries, Sweeney, and Texas City. There's very little medium complexity there. And I think for a reference point, you can go to the end of this PowerPoint when we send it out. And there's a slide there that shows complexity by region on a bubble map. So the demand for light sweet is very minimal, but it's being filled by Eagle Ford and Bakken presently. Exact amounts obviously can vary with the flexibility and the makeup of the refinery. I know Sweeney was recently quoted at 60,000 barrels per day of light sweet. And I believe the smaller Marathon refinery and maybe the Valero one in Houston are light sweet, or can take predominantly light sweet, but I would have to double check those figures. But for the most part, that area is a heavy sour processing region.
Okay. And our last question is around Freeport. You had mentioned that it currently cannot load barrels. Do you have an estimate as to when it will be able to going forward?
I have been told that it will be ready sometime in the second half of 2012. But again, we'll watch actively and continue to diligently dig for emissions permits that reflect that they're changing the sequence around.
Okay. One more question has just come in. With ECHO operational now with 750,000 barrels of storage, what is currently flowing there? How active is ECHO at the moment?
They're not operational at 750,000 barrels of storage. They're operational with 500,000 barrels of storage. They have the third one is coming online in February. As far as how much is being stored there, due to the weather yesterday, our pilots were not able to get close to the ECHO facility. What we showed you for an image was satellite imagery from Digital Globe, but we are looking to get better visibility as far as continued monitoring on that specific storage site, given its implied importance, and do a service that provides just how much storage is in there at any given point, or storage is being utilized at any given point in time.
Great. Okay, that concludes our questions, and I'll wrap this up now. Just my thanks to Adam for all of his hard work on putting this very detailed presentation together. We will get the slides out to the attendees, and we look forward to working and speaking with all of you going forward as we grow our business here at Genscape and add more and more into our monitoring network. Thank you, everyone.